This episode has had a rocky start. About every stressor in existence hit me right as the semester ended, so getting the Taiwan episode finished was less of a home stretch and more of a death march. After that, I did research into the next topic I had, only to find out that everywhere named hell basically translates to 5 places in North America that had hellish conditions and cheeky founders, and 1 place in Norway that sells souvenir postcards. So, that was a bust, and I needed to find my muse for some other topic. Fortunately, in between bouts of existential dread, mental breakdowns, and Yakuza games, I remembered that Interpol existed and decided to do some digging. And what I found was fucking rich. Back in the 1800s, when Europe was still mostly shitty instead of mildly shitty, there was a crime problem. If somebody kicks their nan down the stairs in the UK and then hightails it to France, what are the British going to do? Well, they're British police, so they wouldn't do anything anyway, but the sentiment stands, damn it. Jurisdictions are a bitch, and the 1800s were ending, and spying was becoming more of a thing, so those muddy waters were getting a truckload more dirt and a teaspoon more liquid. Alright, France, we'll agree to ship anyone who commits crime over there back over if they hop the border, and we'll help you catch them. That sounds great, Germany, let's shake on it. Is it over? And now we're friends. Over time, along with the UN, that little task force dedicated to cross-judicial mishaps grew and grew, with more countries adding to the mix. Eventually, this became the International Criminal Police Organization, or Interpol for coolsies. Now, you may be asking yourself, but Goat, I saw a movie where a sassy Interpol agent with black hair, a skin-tight jumpsuit, and an accent that isn't thick enough to scare horny dudes solved a murder with Matthew McConaughey. Where does Elizabeth Steele, the real woman, come in? That's the thing, viewer. Elizabeth Steele, the Interpol agent that doesn't take any funny business but falls for any man that happens to be a protagonist, does not actually exist. Interpol agents don't exist. I'm pretty used to being disappointed. I am a Danganronpa fan after all, but this hit me like a sack of bricks. With a name like Interpol, you'd think they would either police international law or be a worldwide pork producer, but neither of those are actually true, which is weird given how universal the image of Interpol agents is. Interpol are phone operators, basically. They connect police jurisdictions in one country to another and bridge the language barrier. That's it. I'm sorry if this revelation is like the truth about Santa for adults, but Interpol is a cubicle job. Here's how Interpol actually works. Outside of just passing info between jurisdictions, they have a card system that's pretty much all they do. The red card calls for the immediate arrest of whoever it's on, and the other cards don't matter. Whenever someone bombs a hospital in Tokyo, Interpol will put a red card up, which functions sort of as an international arrest warrant in theory. In practice, the red card's usefulness and usage varies wildly depending on the operators working that day, alignment of Jupiter, system time, and whether or not the last Mission Impossible movie was any good. Sometimes they get their man, and sometimes, well, it's not so much that Bin Laden was a master of disguise, it's more so a combination of incredible luck and ghost protocol. Keep in mind, Interpol still isn't the organization arresting these guys. They're just the fat cats on top of the food chain pointing vaguely at where the terrorist is. They're good at catching drug traffickers, human traffickers, money traffickers, traffic cops, and unregistered traffic lights, but that's about it. Terrorists slip through the cracks all the time because it's a hell of a lot harder to pin those guys down. Interpol has a budget lower than my self-esteem, so it's not exactly easy for them to weasel around to knowing where to put the red cards out for if the person in question is using today's sponsor, NordVPN. But that's not enough for a video on its own. I mean, it could be if I stretched out my words long enough, but it's not. Where's the spicy drama? Well, for an organization that's the international equivalent of Steam support, there's a surprising amount, and I'm gonna list off a few notable cases of Interpol being such a shitty, lame organization that it manages to get itself in hot water off just how nothing it is. See, the thing about Interpol is they're constantly asked to enforce other countries' rules in other countries. Say Turkey has some dissident that's talking smack at Erdogan but now lives in the Czech Republic. Turkey calls up Interpol, and the Interpol agent, presumably high out of his mind, issues a red notice for the refugee in the Czech Republic. This actually happened, by the way, on more than one occasion because Turkey continues to do this despite it backfiring constantly. It usually ends with local law enforcement realizing, wait, this is stupid, and releasing the prisoner, but sometimes they get extradited back to Turkey and Interpol pats themselves on the back for a job well done as the journalists are publicly flogged. This is actually very frequent, where refugees seek shelter in another country only for Interpol to bust in and order their extradition. Alright, son, we've finally escaped war-torn Syria, and now we're in Sweden. Boy, I sure do hope Sweden's own policy of refugee acceptance isn't completely ignored by a brain-dead international organization that huffs glue all day. But wait, aren't Interpol supposed to be politically neutral? They're supposed to follow the International Tribunal on Human Rights. Why are they arresting refugees? Interpol says they don't persecute for religious, military, political, or racial nature, which encapsulates pretty much everything that they prosecute anyway. Don't worry though. Asylum seekers can apply to Interpol to have their international arrest cards overturned. Where can they apply for this? At the police station, of course. So, outside of not being cool at all, Interpol is actually the world's biggest snitch organization, ratting on asylum seekers and political enemies for any country that wants them dead. Even if they don't manage to arrest them, they usually dox their targets in the process, giving the authoritarian governments in question all the ammo they need to harass and probably execute a few of them. One Turkish journalist in particular received phone calls day in and day out after her brief stint in jail. Hello?
Hello, is this Miss Idiot Brain? Stupid dumb champ.
I fear. Speaking of transitions, Interpol actually manages its own mini-UN with 194 member countries. North Korea is the only UN member state that isn't on the ball, and that's not really a surprise. What is surprising is that Taiwan isn't a member or observer and has been refused access for multiple decades now. This is especially funny because Interpol includes both Palestine and Israel as members, and they're scared of the drama from Taiwan. Anyone who thinks Taiwan's gonna ratio them more than those two hasn't been on the internet for more than 10 seconds. If you're on the run from Interpol, you have two choices: the DPRK or that funny little island that totally owns Mongolia. One will shoot you on the way in, and one will probably say you already lived in their territory. Watch my other video, please, it took so fucking long. That brings us to 2016, when the then leader of Interpol, Meng Hongwei, decided to take a very long vacation to China after being accused of bribery. He must be loving it there because he still hasn't come back. This has started a bit of a succession crisis that's put quite the hold on Interpol's affairs. The next in line was a Russian diplomat, but that was blocked by the US because they were too corrupt, which is fucking rich. The UAE also had a candidate that was blocked by the British on the same grounds. The entire situation was a pot and kettle convention until eventually they settled on a South Korean dude to sit pretty and do nothing until Meng's term was up. You don't have to tell an Interpol agent to do nothing twice. So yeah, now you know the ins and outs of Interpol and why it's a stupid organization that never really does anything right. It's a hive mind of chickens without heads, and every time they do something, you can bet it's gotta fuck up somewhere in its lineup. Maybe someday Interpol will be cool, and maybe someday people will take Tuvalu seriously. Until then, thanks for watching.